Welcome back to another Train Tuesday. I'm your host, Jim Wiggin, and like I always say, we got a full show today. We got a lot of great stuff to talk about. We're going to be talking Genesis, and no, I don't mean the band, I mean the brand. So let's see who's out there. As always, I've got your comments to my right, your left, and let's see who's joining us today. I've got Chris, KC, Marvin, Christopher, Model Train Novus. Let's see. We have got Mr. Derek Glass in the house. And Derek, stick around. We're going to be talking a little bit about him a little bit later in the show. We've got Matt, Brian, Cody, Richard, Anthony, Rodney, David. Got a full house today. That's always good to hear. It means you guys are excited for Train Tuesday, and what better day to see what's going on in the world of trains. Now, breaking news, while we wait for a few of you to get back on board, breaking news, the United States Surface Transportation Board has denied Canadian National to put KCS into trust. So, the thought plickens. Chickens? Thickens? Plickens? Nah. The plot thickens, that's what I'm trying to say. So I guess we're going to have to stand by and see what happens. This has been going on for a couple of months now, and haven't really heard much, one way or the other. And now this kind of puts a different tone on things. This would have been the biggest rail merger in 20 years. So interesting turn of events. All right, let's see who's out there in train world. We've got... Let's see, David's out there. Terry is out there. John is out there from Texas. Let's see, Richard is in from Lakewood. And we got Alfred. Ian coming in from Quebec. And David. We got a lot of Davids today. Matt and Thomas. All right, well, guys, thanks for showing up here today. We've got a great show planned out for you. We're going to talk about the Genesis stuff. And if you're as excited as I am about the MP15 ACs, well, you're just going to want to stay tuned for that. So let's assume the position. Let's put down the hobby knife, grab your favorite beverage, and get comfortable in our workbench chairs. And let's get ready. Let's get started with some Athearn Genesis. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And we are starting with those MP15 ACs. And let me tell you, I am really excited about these personally, just because I like switching operations, and most of my layouts are small. And we know a lot of you guys out there are also into the smaller switching layouts. So these come at a really good time. So let's talk about these real quick. First one up, this is kind of the OG. This is the Milwaukee Road units. Now, there were two orders of these MP15 ACs for the Milwaukee Road. Ironically enough, the lower number was part of the second order. These were delivered in 1976 to the railroad, and it's not the first or the last time, rather, we're going to be talking about Milwaukee Road units. We're going to see them show up, albeit in different paint schemes as we go on. But we're offering this locomotive with or without sound, and we have got three road numbers for you, 434, 442, and 460. And some of the things that we've put in here that are specific for the Milwaukee Road is they've all got the operating prime Stratolite beacon. I'm sorry, not all of them, just 434 and 442 rather. You've got the weed cutter plow, the Leslie RS3L horn, and something that's kind of authentic to the Milwaukee Roads is the prime electronic bell with authentic sound. Now, that's with the sound-equipped units only, but nonetheless, really cool. And these Milwaukee Road got these when these were new. The MP15 ACs, they came out in the mid-70s, and really a popular switcher because not only could they be used in switch yards and things of that nature, but they could also be used on mainline lines as well. So it was not unusual to see more than just one working its job. Sometimes you'd see more than that. So one that really got a lot of interest with you guys this past week is the Lake State Railway. Now, this is one we have not offered before. And really cool paint scheme. I'm really really like this paint scheme. Really neat, something that you don't see every day. Kind of a slight homage to the New York Central with that kind of that lightning stripe there, or maybe the CNW, depending on how your preference goes. But just a really cool paint scheme. And like I said, probably not been offered, definitely not on this locomotive in the Genesis line. Now, Lake State Railway, they began operations in 1992. They operate on former D&M lines in the Lower Peninsula region of Michigan. Now, the commodities that this railroad typically carries is aggregates, coal, grain, and in 2016, LSRC acquired 2 MP15AC locomotives from Union Pacific. So these are formerly Union Pacific locomotives, and their lineage goes even further back. Unit number 1501 is a former MKT unit, and 1502 was formerly owned by, well, Milwaukee Road. Pretty cool. So I'm pretty excited about these. These are going to be great locomotives, and I think coming up here, I've got some actual pictures of the prototype. Yeah, here we have a picture of the prototype 1502. This is up in the Michigan area. I don't have the exact spot. I apologize. This photo was taken by Kevin C. Burkholder. He actually provided all the pictures for us this month for our new releases. We want to thank Kevin for getting those pictures to us. And we want to thank Tony Cook from White River Publications for getting us in touch with Kevin. Really cool pictures. And I'm probably thinking that, well, I'm probably going to have to order one of these. Now, that being said, everything that we're talking about here today, it is available for pre-order until September 24th. That's a Friday. All right, so what's the next locomotive we're going to talk about? Well, not next locomotive, next paint scheme. What are we doing next? Well, we had to do Union Pacific. Union Pacific is always popular. These are the red sills. Now, there's something different about these. These are lettered UPY. Why are they lettered Y? Well, because they're for yard service, and that's so that the numbers that are chosen for these switchers are not accidentally confused with an actual road unit. This release that we're doing here, these are all former Milwaukee Road MP15ACs that eventually found their way on the Union Pacific. And the UPY, the reporting mark that you see on the cab, that denotes the Union Pacific yard unit. It's used to avoid number conflicts with other UP units. So we had to do UP. There's no escaping the UP. And let's see, I'm going in and out from your comments and questions. I may miss you since I'm using, you don't see it, but back here in the background, I'm operating multiple screens. So I will try to catch those, but when I have a chance to actually call you out, I will. I'm looking at the comments here real quick. Austin, not this round, no. Not this round. But stay tuned. Remember, the MP15 hasn't run in a while. We did some upgrades to this, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. So I've got one for you guys on the East Coast that I know you're gonna love. One we don't do very often. There you go, Long Island Railroad. Now, we did this one in two schemes. This is the later, this is 2010 plus. They changed their paint scheme after 2010. This is the more modern paint scheme. Really eye-catching paint scheme. And this is I think the first time we've offered this locomotive with this paint scheme. So you guys that have been asking for Long Island stuff for a while, hey, we got you. We got you covered now. Not only do we have the 2010 paint scheme, but we also have the earlier one from before. This would be, mid-2000s. Early 2000s and mid-2000s, the old blue and gray. Slightly different shade of yellow. You know, one of the interesting things to remember, too, is the Long Island Railroad is the oldest railroad in the U.S. still operating under its original name and its charter. It's also the busiest commuter rail system in the United States. Now, they acquired these locomotives, these MP15 ACs. They acquired these in 1977. So they've been working hard on that railroad ever since. So there you got it. Well, you know what? I think I got one more. How many guys want CSX? Looking at the comments here. I know CSX is popular with you guys. How many guys out there want CSX? How many want YN3? So that's the next one that we're doing. We are doing the YN3. Now this setup is really cool. Let's go into the specifics. This is just one of the locomotives. This one's got the AC on the cab, the RV style, okay? But for the CSX units that we're offering, we did something really cool. If you go to our website, if you go to athearn.com and look at the new announcements and check out the PDF page, you'll see that we're doing 3 different CSX locomotives. And they actually operate a wide variety, these MP15s. Mainly, these are coming from L&N and S&L Heritage, or SCL. So many, of course, have been repainted in this new paint scheme. But if you take a look at the PDF on our website, every single one of these is different, which is what Genesis means. Every locomotive, despite its road name, is going to have the prototype features of its numbering. Okay, so 1161, like we were talking about, has the RV style air conditioner. The other unit we're doing, 1179, that one's got strobe lights on the cab. It's got a pair of them. 1180 has CSX angled style ditch lights on the rear, front and rear. And these, of course, you guys had asked for it too. You guys have been asking, hey, can you when you do the MP15 AC again, can you run them with ditch lights? And we're like, sure, why not? So the developers worked on it, and there you go. So modern MP15 ACs are all going to have ditch lights as applicable to their road. And then again, a lot of these that have specific road numbers are going to have specific details depending on where their lineage was. Now the CSX, like I said earlier, are going to have some from the roads that they purchased over the years, and same with even the short lines like Lake State. They came from both came from UP, but before they came from UP, they came from different areas as well. One of which being Milwaukee Road. All right. Well, before we go on to the next item, I want to take a look out here and see if anybody's got any questions or comments on the MP15 ACs. Let's see. So a couple of guys asking for the SP units. Yeah, not this round. That may be true. Chris has a comment mainly about CSX is removing the CSX boxcar logos on all of their locomotives with YN3 paint scheme. I've heard that too. I don't know if that's a official thing, but I've noticed here, even in Champaign, when we get some run-throughs, I've noticed some YN3s without that boxcar scheme. All right. Good to hear. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. we run these locomotives because we hear back from you, and you probably remember it's probably been about a month or so. We sent out a survey online saying, "Hey, what lines would you like to see? We're planning on coming out with the MP15AC again, and what would you like to see?" And what you see here in this release is because of what you guys wrote in, and be sure to see that more in the future. All right, so let's go to our next item. We're going to go in the Wayback Machine, as I say. We're going to go back to the 1940s. We were in the 70s to modern day, but let's go to the 1940s. All right, maybe not too far. Let's start in the 1980s. How's that? You're thinking, wait a minute, you said 40s at first, and then you said the 80s. Well, we're talking the Challenger, the new Genesis Challengers. Now, yes, we've done these in the past, but we've upgraded these as well. We've upgraded into LEDs, LED firebox, a much better connection between the steam tender and the locomotive itself. So the biggest news on this is it now has a Tsunami 2, which it did not have when we released it prior. Now you're saying 1980. I thought the Challenger was in the 1940s. Well, this 3985, this is the one that you, if you were rail fanning from 1980s into the 2000s, you may have been lucky enough to catch this. I know I was up in Rochelle, Illinois, years ago. This is the Excursion. This is the modern Excursion version, and it depicts as it appeared from the 1980s to the 2000s. Let's go ahead and make that bigger so you guys can take in the 3985's glory. So, brief background on these. In the spring of 1941, the Union Pacific locomotive designers began working on a locomotive that would team up with the new 4884 Big Boy. We're going to talk a little bit about the Big Boy a little bit later. Now, those Big Boys were under construction at the time, and the Big Boys were designed to pull heavy freights up the Wasatch Range in Utah to the division point in Green River, Wyoming. Now, what was needed was a locomotive to take over at that point that could speed its freights eastward across the Wyoming division. So, building on the experience of their original CSA 4664 Challengers, UP and Alco designers developed a newer and better Challenger type locomotive. And the results was a group of 65 4664 Challenger built in 3 separate groups during World War II. There's some interesting stuff about these locomotives. We go forward talking about World War II era, but most of these were coal burners when they were built. Now, 3985 was converted to an oil burner, which is more conventional for what would be a modern day steam locomotive, but a lot of these stayed as coal burners right up into the 50s. And the thing that's really neat about these is even though they were 1940s designed steam locomotives, and 1940s was an odd time for steam. It was probably some of the most impressive steam ever built, in my opinion, but it was on its twilight. The diesels were slowly making their way into revenue service, and they were just blowing away the steam locomotives just because of maintenance alone. So certainly the diesels of the day were not nearly as powerful as these steam locomotives, but the maintenance nightmares that the diesels took care of versus the horrendous hours of maintenance that was needed to keep these locomotives, these steam locomotives running. That's pretty much what was the end. So it's an interesting era. But they lived, these Challengers lived on the UP in different functions right up until 1959. Think about that for a second. 1959. It's almost 1960. A few more years later, we'd have the Beatles, transistor radios, touchtone telephones. I mean, it's kind of an interesting mix when you think about it. But this was the last big push of steam. So we're offering these in different road numbers for different eras. We've got the modern Excursion version, but we've got 3 as they appeared from 1940 to 1959. And they have, again, number-specific details compared to the actual locomotive. Now you can see all the details on Athearn's website by clicking the new announcements and clicking the Challenger. Now here is a paint scheme that's just absolutely beautiful. Only a few of these were painted up like this. Only a few. But certainly a really eye-catching paint scheme. These were painted up like this for passenger service. At this point, too, once they got this paint scheme, they also added smoke lifters. And many of these were converted to burn oil. So we're offering this paint scheme in this run. If you've ever wanted to run passenger the way it should be, there you go. Now, some of you are looking at this and thinking, hey, that's a Rio Grande locomotive. I thought these were UP. Well, you would be partially right if you were to say these were UP. These were originally a UP order, but remember earlier we were talking about World War II. World War II had a lot of impacts on a lot of things, and one of them was the railroad. Now, during World War II, industrial production was overseen and regulated by the Federal War Production Board. Now, that's a mouthful. When the UP placed their second Challenger order with Elko back in 1943, the WPB stepped in and they said, you know what, 5 of these locomotives built are going to Denver and Rio Grande Western to help fulfill their need for additional motive power to haul wartime traffic. Because remember, back then, we didn't have the interstate highways like we do now. Everything of any bulk and size, including the soldiers, traveled by rail. And these 5 locomotives, they were all built to Union Pacific specs, but they went to the Denver Rio Grande. So if you want a Challenger and you model the Rio Grande in World War II era, these lasted till about 1946 or so. That's how this one is depicted. And definitely something that rather unique and maybe a lot of you might not know about. So there you got it. We've got in Genesis, we've got a really capable little diesel switcher. And then, of course, we've got 1940s into 1950s big, powerful steam. So quite a difference there. Now, we've also got a Genesis offering this month in freight cars. And for anybody that does grain haulage on their layouts, you're going to want to stick around for this. We've got some great ACF 4600s to show you. So let me go ahead and bring that screen up for you guys to take a look at. And we'll talk a little bit about those briefly. But these are going to be good for anybody that's modeling 1966 all the way to present day. So let's go ahead and put those up here. And we're starting with this lease unit right here. This is a modern day lease unit. Now, before we go on, one of the things that we're doing here is there's 3 body styles offered in this run. We have the early, okay, so this would be 60s, mid 60s. This is the early with the high side ladder, the brake wheel, and single side stiffener. Because remember, not until the late 60s did the FRA start saying, hey, you know what, no more catwalks, bring that brake wheel down closer, let's keep things safe. But the early cars had the high side ladder, brake wheel, and only had a single side stiffener. This is a later one, okay? Now mid, which is going to be most of these in this group, have a low brake wheel, short side ladders on both ends, and a single side stiffener. Late is going to have all of those qualities, plus it's going to have double stiffeners. Now, those double stiffeners came about after about 1971. Okay, so we had to do Grand Trunk. This is representative of a car in the 70s. You see your ACI panel there. You see you've got the low brake wheel. Here's the Anderson. This again, low, this is a mid. Low brake wheel. Still got its ACI panel on it. Chicago Northwestern. This is again a mid, representative of a car of 1977. DT&I. Again, 1970s. You've got the brake wheel mounted in the midsection, which makes it a mid production. And then we go to Gulf Mobile in Ohio. And check out where the brake wheel is. So here's our early version. Here's our early rendition. So you could see in this group, we've got one of each kind of freight car for you to choose from. So if you're modeling Midwest 1966 on up, the GM&O will work for you. If you're modeling the 70s, which we've got the lion's share of these in the 70s into the 80s. So perfect for you guys that are doing 70s, 80s modeling. And then we've got some modern ones in there too. So the great thing about these Genesis cars is, as you all know, they have the utmost detail. The developers put the most time and effort into these cars. And with the exception for Prime for Grime, these are accurate to the actual railroad and the railroad number. It's a Genesis quality freight car, so you're going to have those details and you're going to have the same markings that the full scale one had. Sometimes with Roundhouse, we take some liberties, but with Genesis, we're going to keep everything as prototypically scale as possible, and these are great for that. And if you've got a home layout, nothing looks better than when you have a fully scenic area and you've got one of these Genesis cars parked by it, you're using it for operations, anything of that nature. These are perfect for that. Likewise, if you've got a club layout and you might have like an open house and you want to show the best of the best, you're going to bring the Genesis stuff to that open house. So again, all of the stuff that we've talked about here today, it's available for pre-order till Friday, September 24th. So a lot of good stuff. Let me look at my comments here, see what we've got going on here. A lot of people look excited about everything that we go on have shown you so far. Joel's pretty excited about that Rio Grande Challenger. John, no Chessie today. No Chessie today. We'll have to come back. We do have Chessie this month, but not today. Glenn says, GM&O and Grand Trunk in the mid-70s worked so well for me. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that, because it's always nice when you're modeling a specific time and place and the freight cars that you need come up. It makes things so much easier. Let's see. Yeah, D'Angelo, I do too. It looks so much more. If you're doing the modern day stuff, especially, let's be honest. Railroading isn't what it was 50 years ago. These are containers to get product from point A to point B. So they don't really care about flashy advertisements or billboard-like paint schemes. So, if you model modern times, your covered hoppers are going to be brown, gray, or some form of colors in between. And so patching it is really pretty common nowadays. Not as common as it used to be. It used to be they'd patch it quick and then they'd paint it into their corporate colors. But if you're doing modern stuff, the Prime for Grime patch stuff is right where you want to be. Looks like Railtastic is working on an overhaul of his layout and don't have any grain cars? Well, go ahead and get your pre-order in with your preferred dealer before the 24th. Anthony wants to know, when will the hoppers be available? Well, if you're talking about the hoppers we're talking about today, pre-orders are open from now until September 24th. And at that point, it takes about a year for that production to, get done and sent to us from the factory. So figure next fall, which will be grain season, figure next fall, they'll be here. So they'll be here in time for the next grain season. All right. Well, you remember earlier I was talking about big boys, and wanted to share some images with you. If you've ever been to the Athearn website, and if you've ever looked at any of our product pages and you see these really nice pictures of our models, that's our Horizon employee, Rory. Rory is a really well-known photographer in the Midwest. He used to work independently, and we're fortunate enough to have him work for Horizon, and he's actually the Athearn photographer. And he found out about the big boy on its way to St. Louis, so he got in his truck and he went down that way, and he got some pictures. And let me show you what he got. He got some, I don't need to say he got some great pictures because he's a photographer. That's what he does. But check this out. Beautiful sky. Really cool pictures. He sent us a couple different pictures. I'll share two of them with you right now. Here comes my favorite picture. That is just really cool. It gives you an idea of the immense size of the big boy. So yeah, really cool. I want to thank Rory for taking some time out of his schedule and sending those pictures to us. And like I said, anytime you go to the Athearn website and you see the stock photography on our website, this is the same guy. He can do more than just take static pictures. Obviously, he does some really great pictures, and he does some great pictures for some other things like, say, RC Fest. That's the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is coming up soon, we've got RC Fest. Now, a couple of weeks ago on the show, somebody had asked about the Athearn open houses that we used to do. And we don't do those anymore, but we have something called RC Fest. And don't let the name scare you. We have more than just RC there. Everything that Horizon has under one big umbrella is open to the public once a year. Now, last year we didn't have it because of COVID, but typically every year we have an open house. So whether it be RC airplanes, RC cars, RC boats, or trains, everything's available for the public to come in. Now, the event is free. There is a small parking fee. But for you railroad guys out there, there's a couple of incentives to come on out and see us. Because one, Athearn's going to be there. We're going to have a booth. We're going to have some participation from some local layouts. And we're going to have a special little booth there. And we're going to have a layout where you can come in and actually operate the layout. Now, it's a simple Ingle Nook. It'll give you a chance to try a Genesis locomotive and switch out some cars on the layout. And if you switch the cars correctly, you get to take home this really cool certificate that you were the engineer of. It looks like we're probably going to have Illinois Terminal out there at least one day to look at. If you didn't get to see that, I'll give you a bigger picture of that, because there you go. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, great, Jim, I get a certificate that I ran a model locomotive. That's cool. Well, on Friday and Saturday, both days, if you come to the Athearn booth, if you operate the layout and correctly get the prototype switching done and you get your certificate, you're automatically entered into a drawing for a new Genesis locomotive. So we'll be giving a Genesis locomotive away on Friday, and we'll be giving one away on Saturday to everybody that's completed that. And it's open up to everybody. If your real young child wants to try it out, they can. We just urge you to use some adult supervision in that situation. And like I said, we're going to have some displays there. And there's other things that you can do there as well. There's going to be a great display of RC cars of all types and RC airplanes, helicopters. I think there's even going to be boats there. Now, the last thing is right next door to this event is the Monticello Railway Museum. and they'll be open and running locomotives, full-scale locomotives, that weekend. So you have a chance to come see us at Athern and operate some model trains, and then walk over to the Monticello Railway Museum and see some of their really cool, interesting pieces of equipment. If you've not been there before, you must make an effort to go out there, because it's absolutely great museum. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So if you want to know more information about RC Fest, I'm going to take you there real quick. Horizon has set up a web page for RC Fest, and you can see it right here. And it's a hands-on weekend. It's September 10th and 11th. It's at what we call Eli Field. Now, if you go to this website, you can see all the different things that we're going to have there. There's hands-on activities. You can, if you've never flown an RC airplane, you thought, I've always wanted to fly a P-47. Well, here's your chance to fly an RC airplane. These are just some of the activities they're going to have there. It's a great time. Even if you are just a dyed-in-the-wool model railroad enthusiast, if you like mechanical things, you'll still have fun here looking at all the neat stuff. More details are on the website. So like I said, go ahead and go to this website. It's just horizonhobby.com and then RC Fest, or you can just do a quick search on your favorite internet search engine, RC Fest. And like I said, it's coming right up. Just another few weeks. It should be a good time. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you hope to see some of you out there at the show. So, all right, we are quickly burning up daylight here. So I've got one more thing I want to talk to you all about, and it's GP15s. If you did your pre-order for the GP15s, they are in stock now. And let me share with you some great pictures I got from Chris Rippey of these GP15s, and these are great little engines. So Chris Rippey, he shared these really great images of some GP15s. Here we have the California Northern. Really one of the coolest paint schemes. I'll show you that review here. I'm going to go ahead and show that by sharing my screen. And I've got the sound off because you guys can see it later. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. But Derek goes on here to talk about the Genesis GP15, and he does a really in-depth review. It's a little bit, it's about 20 minutes long. But if you have not had a chance to get a hold of one of these GP15s and you've been on the fence about it, I implore you to go over to DG Model Works and check out his review. He does a great review talking about the different details of the model, and he actually does some miniature operations on it as well, which is really cool. You don't see that in reviews very often. So really nice review. Now, if you forget, keep an eye on our social media. We will be posting this to our Facebook about 5 o'clock Central Time. So you'll see a link in the Facebook social media slide that goes out about 5 o'clock. or just go onto YouTube and look up DG Model Works for this really great review. So I was pretty excited about the GP15s. Really, really excited about them. So I've got two in the studio here. I'm going to go ahead and show what we have here. And they just, even the video does not do these locomotives justice. Really, really cool. Now you're probably wondering, hey, that CNW one's pretty cool, but that California and Northern one's really cool too. Well, that's because if you look very closely, you'll notice they have something in common. They both have that gong bell on the nose. That was a CNW thing, of course, and that's where California and Northern 103 came from. Originally, it was a Chicago Northwestern. A Chicago Northwestern, they ordered 25 of these back in 1976 when the GP15 was all new. By 1995, by the time UP bought them out, there was only about 10 in the system. Now, the cool thing is you can still see GP15s on the UP roster. Last I checked, I could be wrong. They could have gotten rid of a few before recently, but they are lettered like those MP15s that we talked about earlier. They're lettered as yard service, so they're UPY. But the GP15s that UP have now, they are former CNW, and so is this California Northern. That was a former CNW. So really, really cool little locomotive. Definitely something that if you made the pre-order last year when we announced these, if you haven't gotten them all yet, your dealer will be calling you. If you did not pre-order and you're interested in the GP15s, go to the Athearn website, select Genesis Locomotives, Diesel, GP15-1, and take a look at what's in there, and then give your favorite dealer a call and say, hey, I'd like to pick up one of these GP15s they talked about on Train Tuesday. Because if you've got a small switching layout or a branch line type of layout, these are perfect for that. And we picked out roads that are good for anything from the 1970s on to modern day. So I'm going to take a few questions, and then we're going to pull the pin on this episode and get back to some modeling. So let's see what we've got here. Amy wants to know, Jim, why won't Horizon let you travel to places like Atlanta or Charlotte? Well, Amy, that's probably because if I haven't heard of it yet. If there's any shows down there, we would. Now, keep in mind with COVID going through the different stages that it's going, different states have different requirements for what is allowable and what is not allowable. Other circumstances have come up too. Recently, it was brought to our attention that the 2021 Train Fest up in Milwaukee would not be held this year. So that's unfortunately a show we won't be attending. There are other shows like the Amherst Society show in Springfield, Massachusetts in 2022 we plan on being at. There are other shows throughout the country that as things continue with COVID, as they change, that kind of limits us sometimes as to where we can go. But generally, we will be at larger train shows that are 2 days or longer. So maybe if we see something in Charlotte, we might just actually show up. You never know. Joseph, yes, those grain covered hoppers that I showed you earlier in the show, those are available. Those are available for pre-order until Friday the 24th. So you've got almost a full month to get your order in with your favorite dealer. Let me see. Troy's got a big, I'm going to have to use the screen to read this, but he spent the time to type this. He's either a really fast typer or, let me see if I can read this. Hey, Jim, if your team can do a remastered NSGE AC44C6M fourth, and he's got specific roads he wants too, that would be cool. And I'd like to see NS4144 and a GE AC44CXM. Here's the thing. Troy, if you can do me a favor and our developers a favor, if you can go to Athearn.com, go to the product suggestions email and put all that information in, that would be huge. Can't guarantee you we're going to make it right away, but I can guarantee you that our developers are reading that, and we do appreciate everybody's input. We can't catch all of them, but we try to read as many comments and emails and everything that comes into Athearn.com. We're watching it. It's not just me, but it's a team of folks here at Athearn that are watching. Let's see. Joseph, I already got you, but as far as the AC 4400, we'll be talking about that soon. Let me see. Z-scale, huh? You've got better eyes than I do. It's not off the table, but at this time, we feel that we're offering mainly an HO as well as N. Those two segments are the largest, and we're going to concentrate on them. But that doesn't mean we won't do Z in the future. Remember, there was a time when Athearn only did HO. Oh, let's see. I just saw a comment question about the MP15s by Nicholas. Here we go. Nicholas says, Jim, do you think another run of the MP15 ACs might be announced in the near future? I was really looking forward to an announcement for Milwaukee Road Bandits. That would be a cool setup, especially in the Prime for Grime. I don't know when we'll offer these again, but I don't think it will be as long of a span as it was from the last time that we offered the MP15s, which was way back in 2014, if I remember right. And I've got time for one more question, and then we're going to call it a day. Let's see. Looks like Jake's got a good question. Jake says, Jim, any chances that there will be some unnumbered AC 4400s and Dash 9s to where we can do our own road numbers? Well, that's a good question. We have offered stuff like that in the past. Now, the run of Dash 9s that'll be due here soon and the second run that'll be due later in the winter, all of those have road names already, or road numbers already applied to them. AC 4400s is a possibility. We might do something like that. Now, generally, since Genesis is a specific to the road number item, it's not generic. That's usually left for a roundhouse. With a modern locomotive, that doesn't always work. In the old days, when the original Class 1s would order, say, Jeep 9s, they would order them all. Pennsylvania would have them all the same. So literally the only differences would be very minute, usually just a road number. Modern day locomotives, that's not always the case. So that's why we haven't really done that. Now, if you really want to do that, if we offer a road number that you don't care for and you want to run another road number, if you go to our YouTube channel, there is a special video there that shows you how to remove specific lettering or even logos from our freight cars and our locomotives. And it's real simple. It's a short video. I think it's 5 minutes long. And that reminds me too, if you haven't already, please go over to our YouTube channel, like, subscribe, ring the bell, and that way you'll be notified of any new videos that we bring out. We're hoping to do a lot more videos as we go into 2022, and they won't just be L Train Tuesday. We're going to start giving you guys a sneak peek of what's going on behind the doors of development. So be sure to stay tuned for that. So I want to thank everybody for coming on board today. I know the show is a little bit longer today, but man, we had so much great material we had to go over. Do go to your dealer, talk to your dealer and say, hey, I want an MP15, maybe a Challenger or those ACF 4600s. You've got till Friday, September 24th to place your pre-orders. Do it now because you don't want to be that guy next year that shows up at the hobby shop only to see the locomotive that you wanted to buy in the hands of your buddy going out the door. Until next time, everybody out there, be happy, be healthy, be safe, do some modeling, and above all, high greens, everybody. Have a great day.